The first part of the Continental miniseries, a spin-off on Peacock from the John Wick franchise, was fine. It did the job of kicking off the storylines. As a reminder, there were three. The main one about the Scott brothers, Frankie and Winston, being in trouble with the manager of the Continental, Cormac O'Connor. Frankie stole the coin press for the gold coins used as currency in the underworld of John Wick. Frankie gets whacked at the end of the episode, and Winston and his associates vow revenge on Cormac. Then we had a storyline about a gun-running pair of siblings and their troubles with the dojo their father left them when he died, and a story about a female detective who was trying to go after Frankie. When I did the first episode review, I ended by saying I might combine the last two episodes into one review. As you can tell from the title, I have done so. This is where I say there will be spoilers. You have been warned. The second episode starts with Frankie having his brother cremated. He takes the ashes back to the dojo and asks the rest of the crew if they are in on his plan to take the Continental from Cormac and kill him. They say yes, but they will need an army. The siblings tell him about a woman who is independent of those associated with the Continental, and he heads out to try and make contact with her. Meanwhile, a new boss has arrived in Chinatown and is upsetting the agreement the siblings' father had with the local protection racket. It is why the dojo's windows keep getting broken. The boss is changing the agreement, and part of that is everyone in the neighborhood has to have one of his cigarette machines in their place of business. Lou, the sister, objects, and eventually kicks the crap out of his minions. He invites her in to talk and reveals that her father was not the saint she believed he was. Cormac also gets a visit from an adjudicator from the high table, warning him he has 3 days to get the coin press back or he will face consequences from the high table. In response, Cormac sends the Weird Twins to Uncle Charlie's trailer to look for the coin press, not finding it. Sharon, in a storyline that was as dumb as it was truncated, gets close to the house cellist. They get to talking, and the cellist tells Sharon that he has been given a place at a conservatory in Ireland. He would like Sharon to go with him. Sharon declines, telling him that his place was at the Continental and his loyalty with Mr. O'Connor. Later, the cellist is asked up to Cormac's office where he is congratulated for his admittance to the conservatory. Cormac reveals that he put in a call to them to get him a place. The cellist tells Cormac that he tried to get Sharon to go with him, but Sharon told him his loyalty was with Cormac. Cormac asks the cellist to play something for him, and, in the middle of his piece, he bludgeons the cellist to death with a golf club. The most important part of the episode, which was an episode devoid of overmuch to get excited about, since it was a bridge episode from the start of the miniseries, was Winston meeting with Maisie, the woman who runs the Bowery. She is the equivalent of Lawrence Fishburne's role as the Bowery King in the second John Wick movie. She controls the beggars and other underclass criminals in the city. Winston wants to borrow her army to take the Continental. She is enigmatic as to whether she would help him or not wanting his money. She wants his story. By the end of the episode, he still hasn't quite got it. In episode 3, Winston figures out where Frankie hid the coin press and figures out what he needs to say to Maisie to get her to help. He buys an abandoned bank and gives it to her, as well as a couple of racks of suits for her people to wear. Cormac tells Sharon that he will be bringing his father over from Nigeria as a reward for his loyalty. That is when Sharon sees the dead cellist, his head bashed in and his cello destroyed. Cormac tells him that he caught the man trying to steal from him, and he is tired of people trying to steal from him. When Sharon asks him what the cellist tried to steal, Cormac tells him he admitted he tried to steal Sharon from him. But Sharon is his, as he proved with his loyalty in the face of enticement to leave. Lou has further trouble with the Chinese mob after she goes to New Jersey for some special ammo, and the boss tells her about how her father got the dojo. He killed the family that lived there as a contract killing and simply kept the dojo afterwards. He gives Lou the gun her father used, which had Hieronymus engraved on its barrel, her father's name. He and his thugs stream into the dojo and start tearing the place apart, and she leaves with the one-armed Chinese kid the boss used as a gopher. While she watches and listens to them destroying the dojo, she has the kid who stole a detonator from her pack of explosives blow her dojo up while the boss and his minions are inside. While Lou was in New Jersey, she was followed by the detectives, eventually beating up on the lead detective. She accidentally allows the female detective to follow her to Winston's hotel, where they were meeting. The weird twins track him to the hotel with Sharon's help. A fight ensues, and both Winston and the detective are shot. They then take Winston to the Continental, and the plan is kicked off. Not knowing Sharon is actually on Winston's side until he and Sharon are taken to Cormac's office by the thugs, Cormac blusters about everyone trying to cross him. Winston gets free, and when Cormac goes to get the shotgun he had hidden under his desk, it is gone, having been taken by Sharon. The button to the alarm that suspends the rules of no killing in the hotel is also defunct. Cormac escapes into a hidden passage. When he gets lost, he bashes his way through one of the walls and comes out to rally some of the guests to head to the armory. Winston and Sharon are there when he gets there, and the 10 guys he has with him all point their guns at him. Cormac comes in with triumphant bluster, pulling out the key to the armory and taunting them. He puts the key into the vault and breaks it off, telling him that nobody is getting in there. That is when Winston reveals that half of the guys Cormac has with him are actually with Winston. He got Maisie to agree to help him, and they snuck people into the hotel as guests using the coin press to make coins to pay for the rooms. The hotel is a sudden free-for-all as Cormac's guests and Winston's plants go at it. Cormac shuts off the lights in the room, and the gunmen start shooting. When Sharon turns the lights on, they're all dead and Cormac is gone. Winston shoves a body off of him, and they retreat to Sharon's room, where he injects Winston with medicine for the gunshot he has. He tells Winston that he was friends with Frankie. Frankie was one of the only people that came through the hotel that talked to him like he was a person. It is why he was inclined to help Winston, even before he trapped Sharon on a bus to recruit him. Frankie used to slip him money and weapons, encouragement to go home and get out of this life. So they arm up and go looking for Cormac in the chaotic mess that are the hotel's halls. They eventually track him down, but he gets away in an elevator. When they pry open the doors, the elevator car has disappeared. Cormac has gone to a hidden floor that has a control room to the whole hotel. He triggers the alarm and uses the speaker system in the hotel to alert the guests that the rules have been suspended and there are 2 people with bounties of $2 million on their heads in the hotel. He uses pneumatic tubes to deliver wanted posters of Winston and Frankie to all of the guests. After scenes with Lemmy and Lou's brother Miles fighting on different floors and having trouble, and Yen looking for the weird twins via the air ducts, Sharon leads Winston to the kitchen where there is a dumbwaiter that should lead to the control room. Meanwhile, Cormac has decided that his position is hopeless, and so he sets a self-destruct sequence for the hotel and leaves for the subway tracks under the Continental. Metal shutters close everyone in and a countdown starts. Shortly before that, on the roof, Yen caught up with the weird sister after Miles and his sister killed the weird brother. They fight hand to hand with Yen mostly getting roughed up. They eventually wind up in the ornamental pond in the middle of the roof where the twin threw her gun and Yen dropped her suicide vest and controller. After a short struggle in the water, the weird twin pulls her head out of the water and rests on the edge, breathing heavily. Behind her, a hand emerges with the bomb vest detonator. The twin did not realize that Yen put the vest around her, and she blows up. Yen pulls herself out of the water around the time the shutters come down. After pounding on them, she sits on the stairs and waits peacefully. Winston finds his way down to the subway, and a short fight ensues where Cormac smacks Winston around until he falls. He then picks up a large wrench and brags about making Winston and Frankie pull the arson job they show the younger brothers doing in a flashback in the first episode. Earlier, in the madness above, the detective found Winston and was going to burn him alive because she was a survivor of that fire. The reason she wanted Frankie so bad was he killed her family. She knew Winston was there and wanted to kill him too. He confessed to being the one to start the fire, but that they did not know anyone was in the building. Winston's sniper shot her, preventing her from throwing the lighter on his lighter fluid doused self. Winston calls off the kill shot and made sure she would be alright before going after Cormac. Now, as Cormac was bragging about sending the brothers on that arson job so they would have done something they could never walk away from, the detective comes up behind him and points her gun at his head. He tries to bluster his way out of it, thinking she is just another guest out for the bounty. When he sees she is not following his orders to leave, he realizes she is someone he did something to. That is when she shoots him. Then she walks away, leaving her bulletproof vest in the tunnel. The survivors of the attack on the Continental gather in the lobby bar and have a drink to remember Lemmy, who died in the fighting, and Frankie. They hear a banging outside, and Winston goes to see what it is. The guy who was beating Frankie's heist partner while wearing a kilt in the first episode is pounding a sign onto the side of the hotel. The adjudicator gets out of her car and congratulates Winston on his win, but that Cormac was beholden to much bigger players. Winston acknowledges that and says the coin press is in a safe place. As he says that, we get a flashback of Maze's people making coins using the press and donning suits that Winston provided. We also see the press in a vault of the bank that Winston bought Maisie. The adjudicator tells him that she speaks for the high table, and that they don't even know who he is. And during this conversation is when we find out that Frankie was hired by the high table, or at least factions therein. He laughs and tells her they will, that he doesn't usually shoot the messenger, and shoots her before quickly aiming the gun at the bruiser. He leaves and Winston goes back in the hotel. The end shot is of Winston on the balcony of what used to be Cormac's office, sipping a drink and smiling. Overall, the Continental was not overly impressive. It had a John Wick pastiche smeared over a 1970s period crime drama. There was little of the inventiveness of violence that the John Wick franchise is known for, and the action seemed to be action for action's sake, almost as if an algorithm somewhere told Peacock and the studio that made this that now we need to have an action scene. Hollywood appears to have forgotten that action scenes are part of the story and should advance the story. In this miniseries, they seem to have done what has so plagued the latter phases of Marvel's MCU. Created the set pieces and worked the story around them. Change the story, and those action set pieces would remain the same because they are what the studio mandated. Now, I don't know if that's what Lionsgate did in coming up with the script and the action scenes, but it feels like it. They wanted a girl power scene where Lou beat the shit out of a bunch of Chinese gangsters, so we get one. Even if it was more than a little silly in the context of 1970s New York gang violence. I kept thinking, why hasn't the boss taken out a gun and shot her? They wanted utter chaos in the hotel, so there were action vignettes of some of the fighting. Sometimes our plucky band of invaders would participate in them, and sometimes they were entirely faceless, nameless hotel guests and beggar soldiers going at it. But it was largely purposeless to the story's advancement. They wanted Yen and the weird twin to have a hand-to-hand fight, So we stick them on the roof with an ornamental pond in the middle and have the two women go at it. That last one did at least tie up Yen's revenge plotline, since both weird twins were then killed, but it was predictable that it would come to that scene. Just as it was predictable that Miles would need to be saved from the other weird twin by his sister Lou. And I said in my first episode review that the female detective would wind up being tied into the taking down of Cormac, and I could not have been more on the mark. If you could manage to turn much of your brain off before watching the series, there was some fun to be had. Was it something I would equate to John Wick in any of his iterations? No. It was mildly disappointing in both that aspect and in the deeper development of the characters. They had almost 4 hours of runtime to play with between the 3 episodes, and there was little to no delving into any of the characters. Not even Winston, really. And I could suggest a number of places to cut things that would have left more time for the character development that was missing. Most of the detective scenes, the entire Chinese mafia storyline, the scenes between Sharon and the cellist, there were places to fit better writing in that were filled with less important stuff, especially more world building. The scantness of that was shocking. This show is assuming most people watching have already seen at least the first 2 John Wick movies, more probably the first 3. It leans on the world building done in those movies hard. Leaving them to do the heavy lifting where explaining the Continental and the High Table and its attendant world are concerned. The Continental was not bad. As I said, turn your brain off before you start and ignore the, quote, from the world of John Wick, unquote, part of the title, and it was decent enough. Winston, by the end, winds up being an okay character, if not as good as Frankie and Yen were in the first episode. Miles and Lou were okay, if not as developed as I would have liked. The detective story would have been interesting if it was not told in a combined 5 minutes of screen time split between a flashback, a confrontation with Winston in the middle of the chaos of the hotel invasion, and the coup de grace to Cormac's brain pan. Nothing was interesting about her boss and Naked Funtime playmate. Nothing was interesting about the Chinese characters. The plot device about the siblings' father being a hitman did not help that or the siblings' allure. Sharon was not needed in this miniseries. He might as well have been called Ajax or Morpheus for all I cared about him as a character. And he was not even close to Lance Reddick's version of the older character from the movies. No, really the only person who approached interesting beyond meh was Cormac O'Connor, and even he was not even close to being developed. He was just crazy boss dude spiraling out of control. Mel Gibson's screen presence and charisma alone carried that side of the series. He has the experience to turn a nothing role into something intriguing. However, without better writing and more character development within that better writing, there was only so much Gibson could do with it. I would love to see a proper series that goes into the, quote, world of John Wick, unquote, that manages to go beyond John Wick and the characters in those movies, especially the High Table and their machinations. But even a show that follows a different, enthralling character prominent in that world would be fascinating. Having seen this show, I am now worried how they will pull off the ballerina movie that will be coming. Ana de Armas is a capable actress who has impressed in less than impressive roles and movies. But again, actors can only do so much with writing that helps them not at all. That is all I have for this video. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment down below. I will probably have a video about the HBO Harry Potter series coming soon. Until then, tschüss.